understand you. Most importantly, you stop being shocked when loyalty evaporates the instant you cease to be advantageous. You begin to move like a tactician, kind, but never naive, open, but never blind, generous, but never exploitable. This is the first law of Machiavellian power: don't depend on loyalty. Understand its inherent expiration date. No one is your friend, not in the idealized way you might hope. But once you accept this, truly, deeply accept it, you gain the most formidable advantage of all: independence from illusion. Kindness, a double-edged sword. We're raised to believe kindness is an intrinsic virtue, a universal good, that being gentle, accommodating, and agreeable will open every door and earn every ounce of respect. But Machiavelli knew better. He understood that kindness, when not wielded strategically, is frequently mistaken for weakness. He recognized that in a theater of power, niceness isn't admired, it's exploited. This isn't a call to cruelty. It's a stark warning: if your goodness isn't forged with strength, it becomes your leash. We've all witnessed this narrative unfold. The person who constantly bends backward to please others, always agreeable, perpetually saying yes. They believe they're embodying nobility, earning adoration. But beneath the surface, a different dynamic takes hold. People begin to perceive them as harmless, predictable, replaceable. They start to expect compliance. They relentlessly test boundaries. They scoff at silence. And the harder they try to please, the more invisible they become. Machiavelli would identify this as a fatal flaw, because it willingly surrenders your power to those who care least about your well-being. When you lead with niceness, hoping it will protect you, you become a tool. A stepping stone. A phantom people forget once they've extracted what they needed. But when you lead with presence, a quiet, unshakable sense of inner strength, you command attention. Respect. Even a healthy dose of fear. Machiavelli argued that it is better to be feared than loved, if you cannot be both. Not because fear is inherently virtuous, but because fear establishes distance. It breeds respect. It creates impenetrable boundaries. Love, on the other hand, often invites exploitation, especially in a world where most individuals think in terms of advantage, not abstract virtue. And here's the chilling truth: people frequently misinterpret kindness as naivety. They perceive softness as submission. And unless you master the delicate balance of empathy with authority, they will inevitably walk over you, then resent you when you finally stand your ground. Escaping the niceness trap. So, how do you break free from this insidious trap? You must learn to master what Machiavelli termed appearance: to be kind when it serves your purpose, cold when it shields you, generous when it fortifies your position, and ruthless when your very survival demands it. This isn't about living a disingenuous life. It's about recognizing that in a world teeming with opportunists, absolute transparency is a dangerous liability. The person who bears their soul to everyone ends up betrayed. The person who exposes their entire strategy gets sabotaged. The person who pleads for approval never truly earns it. Niceness without strategy is a lamb wandering into a wolf's den. Why does kindness so often attract abuse? Because many individuals are constantly testing the boundaries of every person they encounter, consciously or subconsciously. They push. They prod. They press, relentlessly searching for where the line is drawn. And if you never draw that line, they conclude that no such boundary exists. They won't vocalize it, but internally, the thought forms: this person won't stop me. This person fears confrontation. I can take more. And they will. Not because they are inherently evil, but because people respond to what you tolerate. If you permit someone to interrupt you, they will continue. If you perpetually give more than you receive, they will come to expect it. If you never utter the word no, you are not seen as generous, you are seen as weak. Niceness becomes a self-imposed cage. Machiavelli's strategic kindness. So, what would Machiavelli advise? He would tell you to cherish your kindness, but to weaponize it. Let it be a strategy, not a... Offer your generosity only to those who genuinely respect the value of your gift. Speak softly, but understand when to deploy silence as a potent form of power. Assist others, but never at the expense of your own dignity. And most importantly, be unpredictable. Machiavelli believed unpredictability was one of the most powerful forms of protection. When people cannot anticipate your response, when they are uncertain whether you'll steal, they tread carefully. They respect your personal space. But if your response is always passive, you become a script they've already memorized, a puppet whose strings they can effortlessly manipulate. There's a dangerous myth that equates being feared with being evil, that strength and kindness are mutually exclusive. But that is a fabrication spun by those who dread losing. True power resides in embodying both, a person capable of profound kindness, yet unafraid to inspire awe and even fear. A person who leads with compassion but never bows for scraps. A person who smiles, but not for the purpose of being liked. This is how you break free from the niceness trap, not by becoming cruel, but by becoming sovereign. So remember this. Your kindness should be a gift, not an obligation. Your empathy should be chosen, not expected. And your approval should be earned, never assumed. Because when kindness is inextricably paired with strength, it becomes divine. But when kindness is all you are, it becomes your prison. The inevitability of betrayal. Betrayal rarely originates from strangers. It emerges from those you once shared laughter with, confided in, and fiercely protected. And that, chillingly, is what makes it so utterly devastating. It doesn't feel like an overt attack. It feels like a slow, insidious poison, subtly administered behind a familiar smile. Machiavelli grasped a fundamental truth that most people stubbornly refuse to accept: loyalty is not eternal. It is conditional, fragile, and perpetually negotiable. The notion that your friend, even your most trusted confidants, could one day act against your interests is profoundly unsettling. But it is also the undeniable genesis of wisdom. Because once you comprehend the chilling psychology of betrayal, you cease expecting unconditional loyalty, and you begin constructing an unbreakable strategy. Let's dissect this further. Human beings are inherently opportunistic. We are fundamentally wired to seek comfort, security, validation, and power, and we will frequently switch allegiance offers a greater reward. We cleverly cloak this tendency in morality, in lofty ideals, in noble justifications. But at its core, the mechanism is simple: people pursue advantage. And advantage, by its very nature, is fluid. One day, you are the dominant player on the board, the gravitational center around which others orbit. The next, a new force emerges, more useful, valuable, more threatening. And in that precise moment, loyalty subtly, instinctively, shifts. That friend who once sang your praises begins to whisper behind your back. That ally who swore eternal support stops returning your calls. That lover who once uttered, "forever," starts to withdraw, their gaze wandering to someone else. They don't betray you because you failed them. They betray you because they perceive a greater gain from someone else. And the depth of your shared history? It becomes utterly irrelevant. In the brutal arena of power, history is merely a memory, and people will ruthlessly rewrite it in a heartbeat if it serves their immediate survival. Machiavelli's chilling admonition: never trust in affection alone. He advised rulers, and by extension, anyone who wields influence, to assume that betrayal is an ever-present possibility. Not to succumb to paranoia, but to remain perpetually prepared. The gravest error you can commit is to presume loyalty is a permanent fixture. Because here's the unvarnished truth. When your power wanes, so too does their loyalty. When your usefulness ends, so too does their presence. When their envy escalates, so too does their silent desire to see you fall. This isn't cynicism. It's psychological realism. We all carry shadows within us, hidden desires for dominance, for recognition, for even quiet revenge. Sometimes, even your closest friend harbors a simmering resentment, a jealousy they never articulate aloud. They smile. They offer support. They laugh with you. But deep beneath that facade, they secretly hope you'll stumble. Not necessarily out of malice. Light casts a shadow on their own sense of worth. And if ever presented with the chance to elevate themselves by dimming your shine, many will seize it without hesitation. Strategies for the inevitable. So, what do? First, stop idealizing people. When you place others on a pedestal, you grant them unearned power. When you demand purity, you willfully ignore glaring warning signs. When you blindly assume loyalty, you cease to observe with the necessary vigilance. Instead, meticulously observe people's behavior over time. Do they only offer support when it's convenient for them? Do their private remarks about you differ wildly from their public ones? Do they compete with your successes rather than genuinely celebrating them? These are not insignificant details. They are undeniable signals of future betrayal. Second, build leverage. Do not rely solely on full bonds. Cultivate value that others genuinely need, indispensable skills, far-reaching influence, critical resources. When you are truly indispensable, people will think twice before turning on you, because betrayal suddenly becomes prohibitively expensive. Machiavelli understood that true power resides not in sentimental affection, but in control, not in being loved, but in being absolutely necessary. Third, do not retaliate emotionally. When betrayal inevitably strikes, and it will, do not collapse. Do not beg. Do not fruitlessly seek closure. Understand it for what it is, a significant shift in the power dynamic. And then, pivot strategically. Withdraw. Recalibrate. Fortify your position. Do not allow one traitor to blind you to the entire battlefield. Because here's a chilling truth we'll actively avoid admitting. Betrayal is an inherent part of life. You cannot entirely prevent it. You can only prepare for it. So, I urge you to ask yourself this, and engage in profound self-reflection before answering. Who in your immediate life benefits most from your silence? Who in your inner circle would feel a quiet sense of relief if you experienced a significant setback? Who do you trust simply because confronting the truth would be too uncomfortable? Pause. Reflect deeply. These are not accusations. They are urgent invitations to radical self-awareness. And by betrayal before, share your story. Not for pity, but for the inherent strength found in vulnerability. Because your pain holds a unique power. And your scars are not weaknesses. They are your armor. The solitude of power. If you're still watching, still clinging to the notion that loyalty is a guaranteed constant, ask yourself this. If everything you offered disappeared tomorrow, your status, your resources, your perceived humanly remain. That is your answer. That is your unvarnished truth. And if you've navigated life expecting universal fairness, expecting your kindness to be repaid with unwavering devotion, expecting being steadfast when power dynamics shift, then you are not living in the real world. You are dwelling in a dream. Machiavelli's chilling warning echoes through time, never trust. You ascend, and suddenly, a hush falls over the room. Not out of reverence. Not out of awe. But because your very presence now starkly reminds others of their own perceived smallness. Power isolates, not by conscious choice, but by its very nature. And the higher you climb, the more acutely you realize, no one applauds when the king enters the room. They bow, or they silently scheme. Machiavelli understood this cruel paradox. He cautioned rulers to never become dependent on fleeting affection, never to seek solace in public opinion, and never to confuse mere proximity with genuine loyalty. Because when you wield true power, not mere popularity, but genuine influence, you inevitably forfeit something that most people desperately cling to throughout their lives. Companionship. Let's be brutally honest. Most people desire your success, just not more than their own. They will support you until your light begins to eclipse theirs. They will praise you until your strength threatens their established position. They will walk alongside you, but only if the path remains comfortable and familiar. But venture too far ahead, and you will, inevitably, walk alone. That profound solitude is not a punishment. It is the natural gravity of power. Because to think independently, to act without seeking constant permission, to carve your own unique path through a world built on rigid conformity, is to become a perplexing anomaly to the masses. And the more sovereign you become, the more inherently dangerous you appear. People do not envy what they readily understand. They envy what they cannot control. And nothing is more terrifying to the average individual than a person who refuses to flinch, refuses to beg, refuses to explain, refuses to need them. Machiavelli advised princes to cultivate the discipline of being alone with their thoughts, because in solitude, profound clarity is born. And in clarity, strategy flourishes. There is an inherent coldness to sovereignty. It demands walking without the comfort of applause. It necessitates making decisions that will never earn you public praise. It requires the courage to utter no when everyone expects an automatic yes. It means inevitably losing people, not because you inflicted harm, but because you simply stopped needing them. Here's the harsh truth. Most relationships are fundamentally based on mutual need. Remove the need, and you often sever the bond. Grow strong enough to genuinely rely on no one, and observe how many gracefully vanish from your orbit. But grasp this profound insight. That resulting emptiness is sacred. Because in that profound silence, in that complete detachment from social craving, you unearth the most potent truth of all. You are enough. Not in a superficial, self-help, motivational poster kind of way, but in the raw, unyielding Machiavellian sense. You possess within you the innate capacity to stand alone, and still decisively. Solitude is independence. Solitude does not equate to isolation. It means independence. It means becoming your own wisest counsel. It means trusting your own deep instincts far more than the fickle opinions of the crowd. When you no longer crave, it loses its insidious grip. When you no longer relentlessly chase approval, when you no longer fear being alone, you become utterly ungovernable. This is precisely why Machiavelli's archetypal prince often appears cold, even, at times, cruel. Because warmth, though seductive, weakens the iron grip of clarity. And clarity is the indispensable weapon of the truly powerful. But heed this warning. Many will attempt to shame you for embracing this truth. They'll label you heartless, arrogant. They'll insist you fundamentally changed. That you've somehow lost yourself. But what you've truly lost is their leash. You've severed the invisible, constricting strings of social conditioning, the compulsive need to please, the desperate need to be liked, the ingrained need to belong at all costs. And in doing so, you have become extraordinarily dangerous. Here's the exhilarating paradox. Only stop needing people, the right ones will inevitably gravitate towards you. Not the ones who demand your weakness, but those who profoundly respect your innate strength. Not the ones who seek to reshape you, but those who deeply value your unwavering sovereignty. So, embrace the solitude. Do not fear it. Use it. Use it to relentlessly sharpen your mind. To forge unshakable discipline. To transform into someone